What is going on, y'all? Gamers Goon here today. Week 8 college football season. I'm recording this on Monday afternoon. You're going to be seeing this on Tuesday morning. We do have some games Tuesday. Don't think we're going to talk about any of them. They're all over that 7-point range we kind of given ourselves. And I haven't seen any comments saying you want to talk about any of these teams that are playing Tuesday. But Wednesday, we have a 3-point spread. We do have a 7-point spread, so that'll be something we can talk about. First, before we get started, what a week of college football last week, right? I mean, even if you're not a fan of certain teams, right? Illinois, Purdue. Purdue hasn't been good, but it's a rivalry game. You knew it was going to be close. Purdue took it to overtime. Illinois won 50-49. Purdue failed a 2-point conversion. You look at the Alabama-South Carolina game, decided within 2 points. Pittsburgh, California, another game decided within 2 points. Penn State, USC goes to overtime. Penn State wins. Georgia, Mississippi State giving Georgia a little bit of a scare, only losing by 10. Tennessee, Florida, another overtime game. LSU, Ole Miss, another overtime game. Kansas State, Colorado, another game that Kansas State wins late. And then you got the big one. I'm repping them today. The Oregon Ducks defeating Ohio State. Very, very close to losing that game. At the end of the day, though, my Ducks win. I mean, Will Howard or is he Will Howard or Will Rogers? Which one's which? Will Howard. I think Will Rogers is the guy on Washington. Will Howard, sliding with literally 1 second left. You're getting down with 1 second left. You don't have enough time to get down, to blow the whistle and call the time. They don't have enough time for all that. It wasn't a first down. If it was a first down, maybe you'd add a second back, but you don't have enough time when you're starting your slide with 1 second. And then I saw a lot of Ohio State fans complaining about, well, he was sliding at 1 second. There should be 1 second. No, that's not how it works because he didn't get a first down. He did not get a first down. So you got to call the timeout almost immediately, and there was not enough time to do all that. And then you have all these Ohio State fans upset about the offensive pass interference. Spoiler alert, you can't push off. You can't push off. That's not allowed. You can't push off as a receiver. Not allowed. Not allowed. And then there was some confusion on that penalty, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm also kind of confused on that penalty. I guess the ruling is, since they still decided to go through with the play, they would have wasted time if they denied it, right? Say they score a touchdown there, that time would have still came off the clock regardless. I think that is why, because they opted to go through with the play. I think that is kind of how that works. I'm not fully confident on that ruling, but I would also like to point out Oregon kind of shot themselves in the foot a little too. A missed field goal, a messed up extra point that then let them go for 2, which they also missed. And then you had the interception, first drive of the game that did not count, and the rules analyst even said he's shocked that they didn't even take a look at it. Now, if you're Dan Lanning, you got to call the timeout or you got to challenge that, and that would have prevented that touchdown. But regardless, Ohio State fans that are salty about that loss, there's some stuff that went your way as well. So you're going to have to get over it and stop blaming the refs for this week. The refs, they're gonna do what the refs do. They're gonna make good calls one way, good calls another way. It's just gonna have that. That's gonna happen. And it happened that the call that you didn't like was late in the game. The one we didn't like was real early in the game. And regardless, those are 2 big calls. But let's go with the scenario of the first call being done correctly with an interception. You're not even in the position that you were in. So I think Oregon completely outplayed Ohio State, in my opinion. Ohio State, I know they feel slighted. I know Ryan Day came out and criticized the refs a little bit. But this is a game you're going to see probably again this season. I doubt that Ohio State is going to have another hiccup this season. I know they go to play at Penn State. I know they have their Michigan game. I don't think that any of those teams are going to beat Ohio State. I think Ohio State and Oregon have another matchup on the horizon in Indianapolis on December 7th. And if that is the case, I will be there representing my Oregon Ducks. My alma mater. Not too far away from where I'm at right now. I will be at that game if push comes to shove and Oregon is playing in the conference championship game. So, with that being said, let's move on to Week 8. Week 8. Now, if you missed the last few weeks of college football, there's been some crazy stuff with ranked teams, good game after good game after good game. And I'm going to be honest, I haven't got the chance to look at the full schedule. I do know some of the games because I am in an ESPN Pick'em League. But I do know some of the games. We got some good games this week as well. And this is another week where if you're not home, you're going to be missing out. You're going to be missing out big time because I do think this is going to be another great weekend of college football. And we're going to start it off with Wednesday. Western Kentucky versus Sam Houston. Sam Houston 5-1, Western Kentucky 4-2. Western Kentucky coming off of a big win against UTEP. Sam Houston, another team that had a big win against UTEP, believe it or not. Similar opponent, Sam Houston, the underdog in this, or actually no, they're the overdogs. They're the overdogs. My apologies. 3-point favorites in this game against Western Kentucky, and I'm going to ride with Sam Houston to get the job done in this one. They are the home team. They should probably win the game if I had to make a guess. So I'm going to ride with Sam Houston to get the job done. Then we get Florida International versus none other than UTEP, the team we just talked about. UTEP's 0-6. They're 0-6. FIU is not great. They played Liberty close, though. And Liberty, an undefeated team. Liberty, a team we think could be a playoff team. FIU, they win this game. They win it big. 7 points for the spread. They cover that easily. I'm riding with Florida International all the way. Thursday, we have only one game to talk about. There is 2 games, though. Georgia State Marshall, we aren't going to be talking about, is at a 9-point line right now. Boston College, Virginia Tech, though, should be a solid game. Both teams kind of similar, in my opinion. Boston College 4-2, Virginia Tech 3-3. Virginia Tech, obviously, I think we all can agree, should have beat Miami. And then you look at Boston College, they've had a solid season as well. One of their big losses came to Missouri, only a 6-point loss, but that's a good loss. This is going to be a fun game. 7-point spread Virginia Tech's way. I think that is completely wrong. I think this is going to be closer. I think it's about a 3-point game here. I'm going to ride with Virginia Tech still since they're the home team, but I don't think it's going to be a touchdown game. I really don't, so I don't think Virginia Tech's going to cover that. Friday, a game I'm considering on going, but I'm not sure if I will. Oregon traveling to West Lafayette to play Purdue. Purdue gave Illinois kind of a scare last week. Oregon, in their own scary game last week, only won by 1. Both teams actually in 1-point games last week. Purdue on the wrong side of it. Oregon on the right side, obviously. Oregon sitting at number 2 in the AP poll. This is a good kind of week if you're Oregon. You're bouncing back from that big high of Ohio State and beating them. And you get an easier competitor here in Purdue. But we all know about the spoiler makers. Top 5 teams traveling to Purdue on a short week even. That can be dangerous. That can be dangerous indeed. Now, I think Oregon will be able to get over that hump. But there is some concern there. I know Purdue's not been good, but Purdue last week just played an Illinois team that's top 25 pretty well. They played them pretty well in the second half at least. And then you're looking at an Oregon team that could potentially be on a crash territory, coming off that big win and then crash back down to earth against Purdue. It's going to be scary. 27.5. I don't like that line at all. I think if this game was played earlier in the season, if it was played at Autzen, if it was not after the Ohio State game, say if it was after the Boise State game, I think that line would make sense. But Oregon coming in, high expectations now. Number 2 in the country. They have everything left. They are the team everybody's looking at. They're going to be the team that everybody's looking at, and they're chasing along with Texas and Penn State right now. But, I mean, you look at the rest of us, right? We were looking at Alabama at number 1, and seeing them lose just brought joy to everybody's heart, right? Oregon's now that team. Oregon is now that team that every other fan base is going to be looking at, and they're just going to see chaos. Oregon's going to be that team now. So it is going to be very, very crucial to see what they are able to do in that position and how they're able to handle it going forward. 27.5 points for Oregon. I don't like that line whatsoever. I think this is a closer game. I think this is going to be something like 35 to like 24 or something like that. This game is going to be relatively not close necessarily. I think Oregon will pretty much keep Purdue in line. I don't think Purdue's just going to come in and demand the pace of the game or anything like that, but I think this is a game that you're getting in that fourth quarter range and there's only up 10 points and people are questioning, is Oregon really going to lose this game? And I would like to point out that all these teams losing to teams that they're just not supposed to be losing to, our Idaho and Boise State stuff at the beginning of the season, just getting the new feel for the system and the new players on the team, they don't look half bad now, because, yes, they were close, but guess what? We came out on the right side of things, and a lot of teams ain't been able to say that this year. Ask Alabama about that Vanderbilt game. You think Alabama didn't want to win that game? You think Alabama would give up a 30-point win here for a 2-point win to Vanderbilt? I think they would. I think if they played close in all these other games just to barely beat out Vanderbilt, they would do it. I think they would do it. Because at the end of the day, it's not the point differential that matters. Texas is blowing out teams. They could very well lose to Georgia next week. It's about getting the victory at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how it's done. It doesn't matter if it's pretty. All it matters is at the end of the day, it says an extra victory in that win column than it said the day prior. So, Oregon, Purdue, I got Oregon. I don't think it's going to be pretty traveling to West Lafayette, but I do have Oregon coming out on top. Florida State, Duke, a 3.5-point game. Another fun game. Florida State, obviously, we know they haven't been very good. Clemson beat them by 16 points last time out. Duke, similar situation. Didn't look very good against Georgia Tech, but they are 5-1. They are 5-1, and before that loss to Georgia Tech, Duke was considered to be one of those teams that, well, they can make the conference championship. I think they're bouncing back here against Florida State. Florida State hasn't impressed me. There was some stuff going around online that maybe DJU won't be the starting QB there. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what Florida State does going forward, but Duke, I like them to cover the 3.5. Now, BYU Oklahoma State is over a touchdown, but BYU is top 13 at the moment, so we are going to be speaking about them. Oklahoma State, they let me down this season, man. They've let me down. I was very high on Oklahoma State. I thought they were going to do very well. Then the Utah game happened. I was like, okay, it's Utah. Then the Kansas State game happened. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Then West Virginia blew them out. Oklahoma State, really bad stretch. BYU, really good stretch of games, beating an Arizona team last time out. An Arizona team that's pretty solid, by the way. BYU wins this. They cover the 10.5. BYU is looking like a well-oiled machine. That is a playoff team right there as well. Nevada versus Fresno State. Fresno State traveling to Nevada to play this game. Late night game there on Friday. Fresno State, 2.5-point favorites on the road. I think I will agree with that. Fresno State is 3-3. Nevada is 3-4. It could go either way. I'm going to go with the favorites. I think they will cover and win that game. Let's go Fresno State on that one. Next, we're going to start it off just because I have them favored at the top. Michigan, Illinois. Michigan traveling to the real big house. I'm just kidding. Memorial Stadium is not the real big house. I'm going to be at this game, which is part of the reason why I don't know if I'm going to try to go to that Oregon game against Purdue, because I'll potentially have more chances later this year to either go to watch them play Michigan or Wisconsin or in that Indianapolis game in the Big Ten Championship. But Illinois hosting Michigan. Big-time matchup. Last time around that a top 25 team came into town, it was Kansas. We know how Kansas has fared since then. Hasn't looked good. Illinois hosting Michigan. We kind of got a revenge on our minds. At least I do. Because if you remember a couple years ago, I think we should have beat Michigan. I think we should have beat them with Blake Corum and J.J. McCarthy and all those guys on that team when Dev Witherspoon was there in his last year. They called a very bad PI that I completely disagreed with on him. But at the end of the day, you had up to that full game. You had that full game to make that PI not even matter. So you got to be dialed in. You got to come in, win this game. I think it's possible. I don't really love the QB situation at Michigan, but if you look at this game, Illinois capable of winning it. They're 3-point underdogs at home. I don't like that at all. I think Illinois comes in, they handle business. You gotta play ahead because you don't want to leave the game in the ref's hands. Same thing I kind of said with the Oregon versus Ohio State thing earlier. You have a full game to get the job done. Don't leave it up to one or two calls. Get the job done and win this game. Illinois, I like them to win this game. Obviously, they're going to cover the 3-point spread if they win. I think this is going to be a good outing, though, for Illinois. I don't think Michigan's going to be that explosive against us. It's really just going to be, I think, a little bit of a battle to score. I think this could be a very low-scoring game. I could see this game being something like 17-14 in a Lano game winner. So don't expect there to be. I mean, even the over/under on the game's 43.5. That's real low. Don't expect it to be anything super high. East Carolina should not be talked about, but they're playing Army. Army is ranked 23, fellas. Army is ranked 15.5-point favorites. I like Army to win this one. Army coming in 6-0. East Carolina 3-3. East Carolina lost to Charlotte last time out. Army, on the other hand, beat UAB last time out. Looked pretty good while doing so. Army, Navy, both of them are ranked. I don't know which one's going to be a playoff team, but it feels like one of them might be. Army, we're going to ride with them to win the game. Excited to see these service schools starting to make some noise now that there's a 12-team playoff. Maybe get some love, get in there, and we'll see a whole different kind of game of football against one of these. Wouldn't it be fun to see like Ohio State deal with the Army offense? The Army offense just doesn't mimic anything that any other team really does in the country. These service schools run the very specific offenses with a lot of running game and option play and all that. It's going to be real fun to see an Ohio State or even Oregon. I think I'm an Oregon fan, but it'd be cool to see the dynamic of a high-powered offense going up against this real gritty team that can get the job done and they want to run it all over you. I mean, Army, you look at their player stats. Just look at their player stats. Their starting quarterback, I assume he's their starting quarterback. Has the most attempts. Through 6 games, this guy's he's thrown 37 passes through 6 games. Now, let's do the math on that. 37 divided by 6 is 6.1 passes per game. They don't pass! They don't pass, and they're winning games. They are winning. I mean, they've scored 40. 4 out of their 6 games. The other one was a 37, and their lowest scoring game was 24. They do whatever they want in the run game. It's really interesting to watch Army play. I would like to see them play on a big stage. Same thing with Navy, but I am riding with Army to beat East Carolina. I like them to cover as well. Nebraska versus Indiana. Indiana, number 16 in the country, walking in as 6.5-point favorites. Indiana coming off a big win against Northwestern. Nebraska coming off of a gritty little win against Rutgers. Now, this is going to be where I differ. 6.5 points. Indiana's favored. I'm taking Nebraska to win. I have Nebraska winning big. This is Indiana's first real test, if we're being honest. This is their first real test, if we're being honest. Maryland, all right, they're solid. They're not great. They're not bad. Northwestern, okay. Charlotte, okay. UCLA, okay. Western Illinois, okay. FIU, okay. I mean, they don't inspire me. They don't inspire me. But what I do look right now at is Nebraska. They're one hiccups against Illinois. Who I think is a top 25 team, and I think is probably better than Indiana. Nebraska is going to win this game. I got them winning it by at least 2 touchdowns. I think this is going to be a reality check for Indiana. It's time. It's time to drop a game if you're Indiana. Maybe they win. Maybe they win, and maybe I'm wrong. But Indiana, I don't see them actually being that great. UCLA versus Rutgers. Rutgers coming off that game against Wisconsin, 42-7 blowout. UCLA coming off of a close game against Minnesota, who keeps getting away with these late game victories. I believe the same guy that picked off last week picked off this week to end the game. Really interesting story there out of Minnesota. But Rutgers, UCLA, I like Rutgers in this one. 4-point favorites. I think they'll cover that. UCLA hasn't been particularly good. Rutgers, solid. Defense, solid. I'm riding with Rutgers. Louisiana versus Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina's, they dropped the ball against JMU. But to be fair, everybody's dropping the ball against JMU. Louisiana beat App State last week, 5-1. Louisiana going up against Coastal Carolina's 4-2. Should be a good game. Louisiana 3.5-point favorites. I'll ride with them. Arizona State versus Cincinnati. Arizona State 5-1, one game away from a bowl game. Just beat Utah, 8-point game. Cincinnati 4-2. They're coming off of a close victory against UCF. I like Arizona State in this game. They are 2.5-point underdogs. But that's while being on the road. I think Arizona State wins the game. Virginia Clemson, another game we have to talk about because Clemson is 10th. Virginia 4-2. Clemson obviously 5-1. Lost that first game to Georgia. Common opponent, Wake Forest. Clemson's looked way better against Wake Forest. 21.5-point favorites for Clemson. I think that's about right. I'll have them win and cover. I don't see Virginia doing too much there. Wisconsin versus Northwestern. Wisconsin walking in as only 7-point favorites against Northwestern. After last week, that's kind of shocking. Northwestern hasn't been particularly good. They did come off a big win to Maryland, though. I liked Wisconsin to win. I like them to blow out that 7-point spread. I think they win by at least 2 or 3 touchdowns. Wake Forest versus UConn. UConn favored in this game by 1.5. Wake Forest obviously hasn't been that great of a team. We thought maybe they'd be something coming into this year. 2-4 hasn't looked good. I think they have enough to beat UConn. No, we're gonna ride with Wake Forest to beat and win while being 1.5-point underdogs. Miami versus Louisville. Miami can't keep getting away with these games, man. They can't keep getting away with it. They were so close 2 weeks in a row. I completely disagree with the Virginia Tech call. I completely disagree that there was no targeting on the Cal game. But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, you don't leave the game up to the ref. Miami did, and they got the good side of it. Oh, well. This week they're going up against a Louisville team that's capable. Louisville obviously coming off of a game against Virginia where they won by 4. But Louisville, not a bad team. 4-2. Capable, I think, 4-point underdogs here for Louisville. They're hosting it at home. It's got all the makings of an upset. Louisville, you got to come in and you got to beat Miami this week. I think Miami, well, this will actually tell you how good Miami is. They're 6-0, but they're number 6. There's not 6 undefeated teams ahead of them, or 5 undefeated teams ahead of them. Georgia is ahead of them with a loss. Ohio State is ahead of them with a loss. Louisville, if you can beat Miami, that would do us all a favor. We're not big fans of Miami, especially after just barely getting out alive the last 2 weeks of their matches. I want to see Louisville win this game. I'm going to ride with Louisville to win. Auburn versus Missouri. Solid little game there. Missouri 19th in the country. Obviously, we know last time out, Missouri, well, I guess they played UMass, but last time out against A&M, they did not look good. Auburn, on the other hand, coming off of a 18-point loss to Georgia. Close game against Oklahoma. Close game against a capable Arkansas. Close game against Cal. Just played some tough teams. Missouri still in that boat of a tough team that you're playing against. Missouri wins this game. They got to win this game if they have any playoff hopes. Missouri should win. 4.5-point favorites. I like them to cover as well. South Carolina versus Oklahoma. South Carolina should have won last week. Played real close. Almost beat Bama. Had an opportunity there. Recovered the onside kick. Did their thing. Oklahoma, coming off a Red River rivalry, ended up losing against Texas. Only put 3 points on the board. Oklahoma, I expect a high-powered offensive game out of them. 3-point favorites. I think they blow that out of the water. South Carolina, I know you had a bad week in terms of a lot of... You thought you could get it? Well, Oklahoma had a worse week, and Oklahoma, I think, is the better team. So I think Oklahoma is going to come to play in this game. Tulsa, Temple, 2.5-point favorites for Temple. Temple 1-5, Tulsa 2-4. I'm not going to ride with the 1-win team. I'm going to give it to Tulsa. We'll go with Tulsa there to cover and win. Central Michigan versus Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan did not look good against Miami, Ohio. Central Michigan played a close one against Ohio. I'm going to ride with Central Michigan. Why not? Eastern Michigan 1.5-point favorites at home. I'm going to ride with Central Michigan, though. We don't have to talk about Cal. Shout out to Cal, though. I think they're pretty solid still. Toledo, Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois, wow, did we overreact with them? 4-2. 4-2, beat Bowling Green. Toledo, 4-2 as well. Buffalo beat them, Buffalo actually beat both of these teams. Give me Northern Illinois to win it. I'm just going to ride with Northern Illinois. From an Illinois school, why not? Kansas, Houston. Oh, I don't want to talk about Kansas. I don't really want to talk about Kansas. Kansas, what a letdown. What a letdown with Kansas. Kansas started off the season top 25. We thought, oh, well, this is a good win for Illinois. No, it was not. Kansas 1-5. 1-5, lost to Arizona State. And now the games are losing are understandable. Arizona State, 4-point loss. TCU, an 11-point loss, actually. West Virginia, solid team, 4-point loss. UNLV, they actually did end up losing a game to, who did they lose to? UNLV lost to Syracuse, but they've played in some close games. They just haven't been on the right side of them. Houston, easy bounce back game in my opinion. You gotta win this game if you're the coach over there, and I'm gonna ride with them to win the game. You gotta win if you're Kansas here. UTSA versus Florida Atlantic. If you guys have been watching me talk about Florida Atlantic, I do not like their team whatsoever. I mean, I'm just not a fan. UTSA, they're not good, but surely they're better than Florida Atlantic. Surely they're better than Florida Atlantic. I have them cover their 3 points because I don't like Florida Atlantic. Why not? Now, this might be the closest spread I've seen. 0.5. Not 1.5. 0.5 favored Buffalo, which means basically Western Michigan has a really good chance of coming into this game and winning on the road. Buffalo, though, they've been solid. They've been beating teams that are solid. Their loss came against Missouri, did not look good. Connecticut did not look good. Western Michigan, an average team. I'm going to have Buffalo bounce back. I'm going to have Buffalo win. Obviously, they have to cover if they win. Charlotte versus Navy. Navy is ranked, so we're talking about them. 17-point favorites for Navy. I think they'll cover that as well. Charlotte, not a great team. Not a great team whatsoever. Alabama, Tennessee, probably the game of the week if you ask me. Very big game. Alabama, 2.5-point favorites to win this game on the road at Tennessee. Tennessee last week did not look great. They got the job done against Florida, which is ultimately what matters. Alabama did not look great. Got the job against South Carolina, which ultimately is what matters. Both teams have been shaky the last couple weeks. I got Tennessee winning. It's a home game. Enough energy in that stadium to win the game for Tennessee. Notre Dame versus Georgia Tech, 11-point favorites. Notre Dame, I think it will be closer than that. Georgia Tech, a solid team, had some decent wins this year. And then Notre Dame, obviously we know they had the NIU game, and they've been relatively solid since then. Only thing was a Louisville game, a little bit of hiccup, 7-point game. But I do like Georgia Tech to keep it competitive here. I do think they'll keep it competitive, but I am going with Notre Dame to win. Ohio versus Miami, Ohio. Ohio's 4-2, and Miami, Ohio's 3.5-point favorites on the road as a 2-win team. I'll go with Ohio. I don't really care, to be honest with you. This game, I'm not going to be tuned in. What's it even on? It's on ESPN Plus. Wasn't gonna tune in. Colorado versus Arizona. Colorado almost got a big win against Kansas State last week. Now another chance. Arizona, a team that was pretty highly looked like they were highly regarded going into this season. We thought this top 25 team. Haven't necessarily given us that. They did give us that Utah win. They've kind of been up and down, winning some big games, losing some games. Like, really, what are we doing? Colorado, though, I think this Colorado team's solid. I think it's solid. And you might be like, well, you don't really like Colorado. You're right, I don't really like Colorado. I don't really like them. But I can respect Colorado. I can respect what they're doing. And I think Colorado, I think they're going to win this game. 3.5 point underdogs here. I think they win this game on the road. I think they can win this game. So give me Colorado to win it. New Mexico versus Utah State. I don't really care about this game either. I'm going to be honest. Is it? 78.5 is the line by the way. They expect touchdowns galore in this game. Utah State, both of these teams played with it, like giving up 50 points. I'm going to go with New Mexico. Why not? They're the favorites. USC, Maryland. USC coming off of a week that they almost beat Penn State. Maryland, bad loss to Northwestern. USC wins this game. Wins it big. Not a fan of USC. Don't like them one bit. But, like I said with Colorado, you got to respect them. They kept Penn State close. They've been solid. USC's going to win the game. Baylor versus Texas Tech. 6.5 point favorites for Texas Tech. Baylor, they're not no good. Texas Tech, 5-1. Texas Tech, pretty solid. Who's their one loss against? Their loss is against Washington State. Washington State's not a bad team. They haven't been great this year either, but they're not a bad team. Texas Tech beats Baylor. 6.5 point favorites. They blow that out of the water. Baylor's been really bad. 2-4 for Baylor. Didn't look good against Iowa State. BYU, they kept it close. Colorado, they obviously lost. Utah, they lost. Baylor's had some tough games. Texas Tech, I think, is up there with them. I don't think Baylor has a chance. A&M versus Mississippi State. Mississippi State has not been good this year. But what they did do is make Georgia really nervous there last week. 10-point loss. Mississippi State keeping it close. A&M beating Missouri, blowing them out last time we've seen them. A&M wins this game, wins it big. They win this game big. As much as I'd like to say Mississippi State can keep it close like they did the Georgia game, I don't think they will. A&M wins it. They win it big. Arkansas State versus Southern Mississippi. Southern Miss is a 1-win team. Arkansas State is a 3-win team. Not a game I'm particularly excited about. It's on ESPN Plus. Won't be watching. 6.5 point favorites. Arkansas State will ride with them. Talk about a trap game here. I said Oregon being a little bit of a trap game on the road, traveling to West Lafayette to play Purdue. Talk about a trap game here. On ESPN, 6 p.m., prime time. Everybody's going to be watching. At Arkansas, LSU, who was coming off that big win against Ole Miss. 5-1 LSU. They're going up against an Arkansas team. And mind you, if you want to remember this, that Arkansas team knocked off Tennessee. So we know Arkansas is capable. It's all going to matter with what the QB of Arkansas does. Is Taylor Green going to do enough? He is hopeful. He is injured, but he is hopeful to play against LSU. If he plays and he does well, I think Arkansas is on another upset alert. If Taylor Green does not play this game, I think LSU wins and covers that 3-point spread fairly easily. But I do think Taylor Green can keep them in this game. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game, 54.5. I would take the over personally. I like this Arkansas team. I could see this being something along the lines of like a 35-31 type game. It's just a matter of if Taylor Green's going to play. And if Taylor Green's playing, give me Arkansas. I don't care what anybody thinks. I don't care if they're the underdogs. I'm riding with Taylen Green in Arkansas. I think they're solid enough to get the job done against LSU. Shout out Vandy, by the way. Shout out Vandy. They're next on the list, but we don't get to talk about them because they're 26.5-point favorites. Iowa State versus UCF. Iowa State. We got to start respecting Iowa State, man. 6-0. 6-0. They beat West Virginia, who's solid. They beat Iowa. Good win. Good win there. But they're number 9. They're undefeated at number 9. Iowa State right now should probably be... Wait, let me look at the standings. I'd put them right behind Miami at 7. A lot of people might not like that. Oh, I was wrong about the game of the week, by the way. There's one I see coming up that is definitely above that Alabama game. But I'm gonna have Iowa State win. They need a convincing win. They need to move up in the rankings. We need to start respecting Iowa State. 14.5-point favorites against UCF. They're going to get the job done. Give me Iowa State. Kansas State versus West Virginia. Kansas State, close game against Colorado. West Virginia, a team that I kind of view the same as Colorado, believe it or not. This is a team that can put off some really good games. This is also a team that can drop the ball. Kansas State, though, they should win this game. Give me Kansas State. 3-point favorites. I like them to win by at least a touchdown in that one. And then let me retract everything I said about the Bama game. This is the game of the week. I kind of forgot this was the game this week. Georgia, Texas. Number 5, Georgia against number 1, Texas. Texas, 3.5-point favorites. It is in Texas. Georgia, on the other hand, coming off that shaky game against Mississippi State. Georgia has not looked good. I would love to see Georgia win this game because that puts my Oregon Ducks at number 1. However, I think Texas is the better team. I think Texas is going to win this game. If Carson Beck and company are struggling against Mississippi State, I think Texas will give them something to I think it will be similar to the first half of that Alabama game. I think they're going to give them a hard time in Texas, at Texas. So Georgia, you don't want to be traveling to Texas, I don't believe. I'd love to see Georgia win so Oregon can move up to number 1. But I'm going to ride with Texas to win the game. I think they'll win. I don't know if they're going to cover 3.5. I think they might actually just win by 3. This is going to be a close game. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a fun game. It's going to be a game you don't want to miss. Watch that game if you can. Texas, I'm riding with them. I want Georgia to win, but I'm riding with Texas, I believe. It's kind of weird saying I want Georgia to win, by the way. I don't really like Georgia. I don't like them at all. There's not an ounce of me that likes Georgia, and part of that is because of their pummeling of us a couple years ago. But I don't like Georgia. I want to see them win against Texas. I want to be number 1. Oregon needs to be number 1, man. Put us at number 1. We have the best win in the country, and we're at number 2. We're at number 2 with the best win in the country. I get it. It's probably because of the Idaho and Boise State games. I get it. Iowa versus Michigan State. 6.5-point favorites. Iowa. What? Can we talk about Iowa? Iowa 4-2. They lost to Ohio State. Understandable. They lost to Iowa State. Understandable. I was sitting there. I was like, okay, surely 38 points against Troy, 31 against Minnesota, 40 against Illinois State. That's not real. Those aren't real offensive production numbers. Those are just inflated. Those are not great opponents. Those are just not that impressive, right? They put up 40 on Washington. I said that this game was going to be a game that I think is going to be who can score more, which is true. I did not realize that Iowa was going to be the team to score more. If you told me at the end of the day that Washington put up 16 points against Iowa, and maybe this is me just pushing this idea that they can't score from the last couple of years. I haven't really got to watch Iowa until this week either, to be honest with you. But if you told me that Washington had scored 16 points, I was like, okay, so they won 16-14 or something like that. They won. I would not have guessed that Iowa. If I thought Iowa won, I'd be like, okay, so what was it, 17-16? I would not have guessed that Iowa won the game by scoring 40 points. 40 points! 24-point victory. Or actually, I believe this was at home. I don't think it was at Washington. Either way, Washington, you look at them. Guess what they just did the week prior? They beat Michigan. Like I said, these crashes are coming like crazy. You have a team that beats Michigan, and then they get blown out by Iowa. So expect some crazy stuff this week because college football has not been normal this year. Iowa versus Michigan State, though. Michigan State, I think they're terrible. I don't like Michigan State at all this season. I actually don't mind Michigan State as a program, but I don't like their team this year. I don't think they're that good. Started the season off 3-0, haven't won since. Not a big fan of their offensive game. Michigan State probably doesn't win this game against Iowa. Kentucky versus Florida, 1 point favorites for Florida. Florida coming off of a close game against Tennessee. Kentucky coming off a game where they lost to Vanderbilt. Now, Kentucky's one of those teams, and Florida's the same way. Don't get me wrong. Florida's the same way. Kentucky can beat almost anybody in the country. They can also lose to about anybody in the country. Kentucky will play to their level of competition. Florida, same exact thing. You look at Florida. Their losses. Miami did not look good. A&M did not look good. Tennessee, they kept in it. Then they blow out some of these bad teams. But Florida and Kentucky kind of remind me of the same team. Kentucky's going to win this game on the road. Give me Kentucky. SMU, number 21 in the country, SMU. Shout out to them. I said that they should be ranked, and what did they do? They ranked my boys, SMU. Shout out to them. Going up against Stanford. Stanford did not look good against Notre Dame. Did not look good against Virginia Tech. Did not look good against Clemson. It's been about 4 weeks since they've had a good game where they barely beat Syracuse. SMU, this team is solid. They're good. They beat Louisville, 34 points on them. They beat Florida State pretty easily. Give me SMU to get the job done. We're not going to talk about the Colorado State or Oregon State games. Over 7. Barely over 7 at 7.5. But we don't got to talk about them. And then TCU, Utah. Utah, obviously, no longer ranked after that loss to Arizona State. TCU, a decent team. Beat Kansas, who we don't think's that good. Looked bad against SMU. Lost to UCF, who's not that good. Beat Stanford, didn't beat Houston, kind of up and down, had some good stuff, had some bad stuff. Utah wins this game, wins it big. Utah only 4.5 point favorites, but Utah needs a big victory this week, if I've ever seen one, because Utah just got unranked, and I think they're going to bounce back. Anyways, thank you all for watching the Week 8 college prediction video. If you have not already, make sure you like and subscribe. Let me know down below who you want me to talk about in the future. Maybe I did skip over one of your teams. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.